today is, are parasites the main cause of the disease that I'm suffering with? And we're going to talk about the common symptoms of parasites that we have years before we're diagnosed with chronic disease. I'm also going to give you some amazing updates from the wellness champions that are recovering from so-called incurable diseases as they are treating parasitic infestations that they're dealing with, and they're actually recovering from chronic disease. If we haven't met, my name is Pam Bartha, and I'm the author of Become a Wellness Champion and the founder of Live Disease Free. I am really passionate about this topic because I was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis over 35 years ago. By the grace of God, I learned very early on that what I was dealing with was parasites. We didn't know back then what we know now, but still it was enough to keep me from progressing with multiple sclerosis, to allow me to take my health back and to take my life back and have an amazing life for 35 years now. So I am extremely passionate to help other people get their health and their life back too, because there's nothing that brings me greater joy except for my grandkids, for sure. So what I find so interesting is that the common symptoms of parasites that we're going to talk about today, like I'm finding this information on medical pharmaceutical websites, and our standard of care, they say that we don't have parasites in developed countries. So on one hand, our doctors are telling us that we can't have parasites unless we've traveled to an underdeveloped countries. But then in other information that is readily available online from different pharmaceutical websites, drug websites, medical standard of care websites, there's these common symptoms of parasites. And what you'll notice is that as we're talking about them today, that we had a lot of these symptoms years before our diagnosis. So these are symptoms when the parasites are not as populated in our body. And if we listened to these warning signs early, if our doctors understood that we were dealing with parasites early, many of us could have avoided chronic disease, right? Treat the parasites early, avoid chronic disease, get on with your life, and learn how to manage the microbes better in your body. And that's what we do in the Live Disease Free plan, is we teach people how to learn how to manage the microbes in their body. So let's talk about some of the common symptoms. And before we do, let's go over what a parasite is. A parasite is any microbe that lives in your body and causes you harm. So it could be worms, it could be protists, which are single-celled parasites, could be fungi, which are different yeasts and molds and other fungi. It could be bacteria. So there's certain bacteria that live in our body and cause us harm, pathogens. So it could be many different types of microbes. They all cause us harm. They're considered to be a parasite. And parasites can impact our physical health, our cognitive health, our emotional health in many different ways. And we're going to talk about the different ways that they do, well, some of them, because it's a very, very large list. Parasites can virtually cause any symptom in the body, any symptom. So we're talking about all autoimmune diseases. There's 80 of them now. We're talking about cancer. We're talking about heart disease. So there are so many different types of parasites that can cause different types of disease. I did a live event showing you how many of the parasite drugs are anti-cancer drugs. And the drug companies are so excited because they're like, oh, we could potentially have some new cancer drugs these are up and coming promising medicines for cancer. And they're just old recycled parasite drugs. It's really awful. But anyhow, so let's talk about some of the common symptoms. Number one, actually, before we do that, let's talk about some of the common parasites. So there are worms. And there can be roundworms. They can be very, very small, like filarial worms that are in the central nervous system. There could be large roundworms that can be over 2 feet long. There could be tapeworms, which could be very small, but there can also be larger tapeworms. There can be flukes. Some of us aren't even thinking about flukes, but that was one of the parasites that was bugging me. That was a problem for me. And intestinal flukes, liver flukes, blood flukes, they cause a lot of inflammation in the body. Also, there can be different parasites that we have on our skin, right? So for example, when we have rosacea, one of the treatments is ivermectin cream. And it's crazy that a roundworm medication, and it also treats other external parasites, but that can be helpful for rosacea. There's also eczema, there's psoriasis, there's all these different skin conditions. So and then we talked about malaria. There's over 100 years of research linking MS, multiple sclerosis, to Babesia malaria type protist. There's also the Lyme infections, those vector-borne infections that are passed through biting insects. So Borrelia is a type of bacteria that's a parasite, but there's also others. And so there can be other parasites on our skin, etc. So, and yeast and molds, those would be just some of the fungi. So there's many, many different types. There's Clostridia bacteria. There's many different types of bacteria. So the problem is that there are literally hundreds, if not thousands, of different parasites that can make us sick. And we're really behind with the types of tests that we have. So we really don't have good tests. And again, our doctors that see us, that we go to them and we complain of these symptoms, and they just give us medication to manage the symptoms because they don't know what's causing it. There's a disconnect. They don't know that parasites are causing this, and yet you can go online and you can find all of this information, research, medical sites talking about common signs of parasites. So as the patients become better educated, then we are going to have more and more doctors and healthcare professionals, even integrated professionals that are more educated on the different types of parasites and the symptoms that they cause. So the first one that I believe is probably the most common one, this is the start, is that for most of us, we were on antibiotics. And when we're on antibiotics, then the parasites are able to get a much stronger grip, or they're more easily established in our digestive tract because the antibiotic will destroy our health-promoting microbes, which is our natural defense. It's kind of like if you have a really healthy lawn with lots of grass, the dandelions can't take hold very easily. But if you don't take care of your lawn and the grass starts to die off and there's bare patches, then yes, dandelions, thistles, all kinds of weeds will move in. And that's the same with our digestive tract, is that when we take antibiotics, it really devastates the ecosystem, the health-promoting microbes that are inside of us. So then we're more susceptible to parasites becoming established inside of our digestive tract. So we could have some digestive problems. So that would be the first, I would say, usually the first common symptom of parasites. So we may start with a little bit of gas, bloating, smelly gas, belly extending like we're pregnant when we shouldn't be pregnant, and things like diarrhea, or it could be constipation, usually constipation, but for some people it's diarrhea, for some people it's alternating diarrhea. Eventually we could be incontinent, we can't hold the stool, can have accidents, can have urgencies. And so the gastrointestinal tract is really like that's where we should have that huge amount of diversity of health-promoting microbes, and that gets compromised when we take antibiotics, but also other types of medications. So then, as the parasites are not treated, we're not knocking them back because our doctors don't know. They know we have inflammation in our gut, and some of us end up with a diagnosis of either irritable bowel, or food sensitivities, or inflammatory bowel disease like ulcerative colitis and Crohn's disease. So those are more advanced parasitic infestations in the gastrointestinal tract. So that would be one of the first signs, right? Because we're ingesting them and they're getting into our body. And then if we don't take care of matters, if we don't treat the parasites, then very often they will move from the intestines, they will cross into the blood, they will move into different organs and tissues and move throughout the body, all the way into the central nervous system, especially for people that have chronic disease like multiple sclerosis or other neurodegenerative diseases. So another common symptom of parasites would be exhaustion and fatigue. So it's not the fatigue where, you're up too late at night or you've been burning, just up for a few days and you're just go, 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 go. That's normal fatigue, right? And we should really balance our life. If we take, we should give back. It's like a bank account sleep. So we need to get more sleep to get caught up. Otherwise, our immune system becomes weaker and then it's not going to deal with parasites as well either. But it's the kind of fatigue where you know that you're getting enough sleep, but you just don't wake up refreshed. You wake up tired all the time. You're exhausted. You're pushing yourself through the day. Maybe you're relying on caffeine or coffee. You need that pick-me-up because especially maybe mid-afternoon, you just feel like you're crashing. So that exhaustion and fatigue is often caused by parasites in many different ways. They can affect our energy production. They can produce a lot of poisons that really tax our liver and really affect our cognitive. We're going to talk more about that, the cognitive function. But they just make us feel exhausted. Everything's working harder. The immune system is working harder to protect us from these infections. And so we're depleted of energy. And the third would be, I would say, impairment to our cognitive function. So really affecting our brain. And this can be memory, it can be brain fog, but it can also be mood things like depression and really strong anxiety. So all of these different things really affect our brain tremendously. And eventually, like if we have a lot of parasites, and this all depends, the disease that we end up with, it really depends on the types of parasites that we have and where they like to live in the body. So if we have a lot of infection in the central nervous system, we can end up with neurological diseases like multiple sclerosis, ALS, PLS, Parkinson's, but you could also end up with these different psychoses. And it's not always just the parasites in the central nervous system, but we know that there is the gut-brain axis where there is a huge communication between our gut and our brain. And what happens in the gut really impacts the brain. And so we can end up with different types of psychoses. We can end up with bipolar disorder, depression, schizophrenia, and it's just awful. And it's really been linked to our microbiome. And this was known hundreds of years ago by some really amazing doctors that I call hero doctors. So impaired cognitive function is really big, and this really impacts people. They can't work anymore, right? Or they are just dealing with so much anxiety, they feel like they're going to die, or they're so depressed they can't work, they can't function. It's really, really serious. Alzheimer's, etc. Another really important one is anemia. Maybe you've had low blood iron for years. And so there can be various reasons, like iron is deficient in our food these days. But for women, if we have a heavier menses flow, like a period or menses, then we can end up losing more blood and we can become more anemic. But then also if we have inflammatory bowel disease where we're losing blood through the stool, we can become anemic. But again, that's caused by parasites. And very often the extra heavy flow that we would have during that time of the month is also due to the parasites. So those could be some direct causes. And also we could have some parasites that really infect our red blood cells. So malaria, babesia are two protists that would infect our red blood cells, but also we know Candida loves iron, also can make us more anemic. So we can end up with different deficiencies because these parasites are freeloaders. They're eating our nutrients, and we can become deficient in iron, in B12, in vitamin D. So that's linked a lot with the Lyme infections and the B vitamins also with the Lyme infections. but vitamin B12 can also be from the worms, etc. So unfortunately, there's not just one parasite that makes us deficient, but just know that a parasite lives inside of us, causes us harm, and very often can cause nutritional deficiencies. Insomnia, maybe we have a hard time falling asleep. And when we do fall asleep, maybe we wake up often throughout the night. And so we might have terrible dreams. We might find this is worse during a full moon. But maybe, especially around the 3 o'clock time, that's like the witching hour for these parasites. And what you'll notice is that when you treat them, then you sleep through the night again. The problem is if we have insomnia, and that can be through even the bladder urgency that we may have, that's another cause of the parasites, and that can keep us up all night. But also just having a hard time falling asleep and waking up often, all of that makes us weaker. It makes our immune system tired, and it's not going to deal with the parasites like it should. So when I'm talking about this, let me know if you've had some of these symptoms years before your diagnosis. These were the little warning signs that our doctors should have caught. They should be trained in this. They should know this, and they should be going, okay, you've had gut issues, your insomnia, okay, and your iron, you're anemic. Going through all of these and going, okay, it sounds like you've got parasites. So let's try to figure out which parasites you have. Is it roundworms, flatworms, candida, or bacteria, etc., or it's usually a combination of things. So we talked about insomnia, really important. And when you can start sleeping again through the night, it's just amazing. You just wake up refreshed, and then you have more energy, you have more strength. So again, you may notice that you have more symptoms during a full moon. That's really important to watch, because as you treat the parasites, you'll notice that the full moon doesn't bother you anymore. And also PMS symptoms, I should have mentioned that. So when just before we have our menses, we might notice that we're more ravenously hungry. We might have cravings. We might have cramps as we're going into that time of the month. But before then, we're having, mood swings and pain and bloating, and it's awful. And so we think it's our hormones, and then we go to an integrative practitioner and sometimes, or even a doctor, and they're prescribing hormones for us, which is just masking the problem, because once you correct the parasites, you treat them, then all of a sudden you don't have all of these symptoms. And this is not just the PMS symptoms, but it's also menopause symptoms. So women that join our Live Disease-Free plan, and they're like, well, I've been put on hormones because I have day sweats and I have night sweats and I have mood swings, and they think it's their hormones. Their symptoms do fluctuate in different times of their month with different fluctuations of the hormones, but it's not caused by the hormones. It's caused by the parasites are more active at certain times of the month. So for example, before our menses, we end up with a higher amount of progesterone, and our blood sugar level will be higher at that time. The inflammatory immune response will be more suppressed, because that's the pregnancy hormone, right? And so then we might notice we're getting all these symptoms, and then all of a sudden it shifts to where the progesterone is going down again, and then we notice that we don't have as many symptoms. And they've done studies on this, and they find that women that don't have a yeast infection, they have a lot more antibodies for candida just before the menses, just before the period. So it's really interesting, and it's funny, because when women work with us, they're like, oh, after they've treated the parasites, they're like, oh, I guess it wasn't my hormones, because I don't have the day sweats and the night sweats and the mood swings anymore. So that's another really big sign of parasites. So all of that, and more acne during, different times of the month, all of that is just the parasites really, their activity level fluctuates depending on where our hormones are at. Grinding teeth. Is that something that you do? Grinding teeth. Snoring is another thing, right? Congested sinuses, where you're just plugged up all the time, you can't breathe. That's another thing. Allergies, itchiness, itchy on the skin, allergic reactions, histamine intolerance. This histamine intolerance, is kind of a joke because, I mean, it's not a joke that people are suffering, but it's a joke that like all of that is the body's response to infection, to parasites. And as you treat the parasites, as you help the body and you support the body, people notice that their allergies go away, their food sensitivities go away. Please never test an anaphylactic reaction on your own. Like if you've had a peanut or shellfish horrible anaphylactic reaction, don't just think, oh, well, maybe that's gone now. You would have to check that with your doctor because you want to have the proper, the proper medication there in case you still have it, because usually those kind of reactions don't change. But I've seen people that were living on antihistamines and they were not having to take antihistamines anymore because all of their allergy symptoms completely settled down with diet and with treating the parasites. So we know that, worms can cause itchy butt, right? And there's different types of food sensitivities that we can have because we have leaky gut. So we can become sensitive to any type of food. It doesn't matter what it is. It's whenever some foods are passing through the intestinal lining into our blood and they're too big, they're not digested properly, then our immune system is going to go after it, right? Our immune system is very particular. It's protecting us from any kind of enemy invader. So it's going to identify whatever shouldn't be there and it's going to go after it and it's going to remember, right? It's going to protect you in the future. So it's an amazing system and it's an amazing military army protecting us from enemies that would actually kill us, like the parasites would actually cause us to die. And it's trying, but we have to support it. So again, it can be like any rash. It can be eczema. It could be psoriasis. It could be rosacea. It can be, like changes in pigmentation in your skin. These are all signs and symptoms that your microbiome is out of balance. And when we correct that early enough, then we don't have disease. But once you have disease and then you go, man, I had a lot of these symptoms years before. Let me know if you had some of these symptoms years before you had your disease diagnosis. So these are all the warning signs that a person should pay attention to, and then they should really work on correcting their microbiome. And you can't correct your microbiome just with taking a probiotic and changing your diet. So by changing your diet, you can definitely make these parasites more quiet. If everything else is good in your life, you don't have a lot of stress, you have taken care of mold in your environment, you manage the wireless radiation, the EMF and RF radiation, a lot of the different things in the environment you're dealing with, and you're keeping your carbs really low and you're working at building up the health promoting microbes, yes, you're going to slow down the parasites and you won't become disabled as quickly, but they are not going to leave your body without you treating them, just like we treat our dogs, our cats, our horses, different types of animals we have, our sheep and our cattle. We have to treat ourselves. And that is a skill that has been lost. Our doctors, years and years ago, when we had more farmers, smaller communities, it was more acceptable and doctors understood that. But it's something that has not been taught in med school. And so unfortunately, our doctors, they're really told that you have to go to an underdeveloped country to get a parasite, and nothing could be further from the truth. How does it affect boys' hormones? Low testosterone, that could be part of it too. It literally any symptom that is, with boys, we can end up with mood and behavioral disorders with our children, learning disorders, any type of chronic disease. Eczema is so common and allergies is so common. Asthma is so common also. These are all parasitic conditions. So like any symptom in the body can be caused by parasites. It can also be caused by toxins. So there are certain metals, heavy metals, that we definitely have to address, but usually it's caused by parasites. I'm going to go to your questions. So, hi, John. So nice to see you. You're so very welcome. since you've been on the program, all of your gut issues are gone. Praise God. That is so awesome. So good to hear. And Jania, I hope I pronounced your name correctly. You're so very welcome. So Joanne, you can barely walk. And so that's the problem, is that, they start in the gut, and then in time, they move into different organs. And when we have multiple sclerosis, we've talked about some of the different parasites. So like with my students, the very first things we start working on is their insomnia and their digestive, like we're getting the bowels moving. Or if they have diarrhea, we're getting the inflammation down so that they're not having multiple, runny diarrhea throughout the day. So we're working on their gut health. We're working on their sleep. And we're getting the carbs low enough so that they're noticing a lot of symptom improvements. And with multiple sclerosis, so the parasites, like for myself, I can just talk about myself. So when I was growing up, I grew up on a farm. And back in the day, I was the oldest of 6 kids. And whenever we would get a sore throat and a temperature, the doctors had our parents so scared that, you've got to get your kids on antibiotics all the time, because if they get strep, it's going to wreck their heart. It's going to damage their heart forever. So then they really insisted, and the doctors gave antibiotics for us all the time whenever we'd get a fever, whether it was viral or whether it was bacterial. Then when I was in my teens, I was on tetracycline for months, and tetracycline is a real broad spectrum antibiotic. So that really, again, really destroyed my ecosystem, the health promoting microbes. And I was the only child out of 6 that was put on tetracycline for acne for months. And in my book, Become a Wellness Champion, I share of a study where they looked at thousands and thousands of people. And I think it was like a huge number, 60 to 70% of the people that had been on a broad spectrum antibiotic like tetracycline had inflammatory bowel disease or other chronic disease. Like, it's just, we're really susceptible to the parasites. So I had a lot of constipation as a child. Like, I would go have a bowel movement once a week, even as a teenager. And back in the day, some doctors would just say, oh, that's just you. You're just different, right? And I had different blood work, with my blood, anemia a lot, low blood iron, low ferritin, make sure to check that also. And a lot of stomach aches, like gas, like if I ate the wrong food. So like if I would eat things that had a lot of sugar or hamburger or pizza, probably gluten intolerant, didn't know, but I'd be laying on the floor with a stomach ache. So I had a lot of stomach pain, a lot of constipation. I was skinny. I was underweight. That's another symptom too, being underweight. And, my mom would try to fatten me up with ice cream, and all the other kids would eat ice cream too, and they'd gain weight, and I was still skinny. And so like all of these warning signs that I had, and then of course later on had the insomnia, like really, really bad, ended up with like anxiety also, and had mostly gut issues. And then during my pregnancy of my second son, that's where I got the electric shock when you bend your neck down. And you get the little tingle that runs down your back. I also had some tingling in my arms, but it was so mild the doctor didn't think about multiple sclerosis. He just, okay, we'll just keep an eye on that. And then after my son was born premature, so obviously I wasn't in good shape. I thought I was, and I was trying to be, healthy, but he came premature, only like 2 weeks premature, and he pulled out of it really well. But I came down, like I had terrible insomnia and I wasn't sleeping. And so that really weakens you. So going through pregnancy, having a baby, second child, terrible insomnia, and just go, push, push, push. Even though I was sleeping, 3 hours a night, you just gotta be a mom and take care of things. And so I just crashed, and I got a severe case of optic neuritis, complete blackout in my left eye for about 5 or 6 weeks. Because it happened like within 3 or 4 days, it got that bad. I ended up I was referred to a university MS hospital right away. And he confirmed that I had multiple sclerosis because of the severity of the optic neuritis. It was like a complete blackout. And they put me on prednisone. And when I got home, and he told me there was nothing I could do. I'd be completely disabled in time. I'm 28 years old. 2 young, beautiful children, a wonderful husband, and I was just like devastated. And so I cried out to God and I begged for help, and I do that quite often. And because he had answered my prayers quite often in the past, I just had this sense that he would bring some good out of this. I didn't know that I'd be cured. I didn't know that I would be able to beat this MS. I didn't really know what it was because we didn't have a lot of family members we didn't have any family members. On my mom's side, there's 13 kids. On my dad's side, there's 13 kids. They're from Holland. And of course, different siblings have moved to the United States, not that much in Canada, but a lot stayed in Europe. And MS was not part of our family. So it was really shocking and devastating. But my mother-in-law, I still remember to this day, she gave me this book. And this book opened up my eyes to a whole new world of possibilities that I did not know existed. And that book talked about how Candida is a type of yeast, and hero doctors back in the 1980s, so this was like 40 years ago, they were treating infection in people with MS and other diseases, and people were recovering. That first book I read was called The Yeast Connection. Don't buy it. You can probably find it in a library. It's really old. It's a classic, but it just goes to show you that, remember I've talked to you like in different talks, like before the 1950s and 60s, doctors really believed that disease was caused by different types of infections, by different types of parasites. And then all of a sudden, there's been a shift in the way that our healthcare professionals are learning in school, in med school, that it's like, no, it's not infections. It's the immune system is attacking itself for no reason. So now we've got 80 autoimmune diseases. We've got so many different we've got over 20 different disease-modifying maintenance drugs to take forever, like for multiple sclerosis, and that's not the other diseases. And so it's turned into this like huge industries, like multi-billion, hundreds of billions of dollars for each type of sickness. We need special experts for each type of sickness. There's no cure. We don't know what causes it. And so we're really in trouble right now, the healthcare system. We really are gridlocked. We want different, and we have to start demanding different, and we also have to take a different path. So that's what I did. I took a different path. I decided, like, the neurologist gave me no hope for a cure. He said I would be completely disabled, and I thought, okay, that's not for me. I did not know how I was going to beat MS, but I had that burning inside of me. I had that strong intention. When you have that strong intention that you're going to beat this, the how-to shows up very often. And again, it was I believe by the grace of God that it did. So over the years, we've learned more and more and more. We've served hundreds of people in many countries around the world. Many people now that are living free of MS and other diseases since, like, I would say close to 10 years now. I would say maybe 8 or 9 years for sure. So they've maintained that, not just me. And it is from Parasites. So the reason I'm doing this talk today is because if we knew that all of these different warning signs were caused by parasites, and we know that parasites cause disease, we need to treat the parasites early. And if you can't find a doctor, we can help you in the Live Disease-Free plan. We have a proven plan that helps people to get ready to treat so they're feeling a lot better by, again, decreasing the carbs. That's the favored food, and that's scientifically validated, and I've done a talk on that. You can check out, I've got an amazing blog post on livediseasefree.com. You will really learn and understand what you're dealing with, like how these parasites are making you feel sick and the types of parasites. It's an incredibly important educational blog. You'll love it, all the different articles that I post there. You can get my notes condensed. You can listen to me on video. It's the shortened versions. And there you will learn why you're sick. You can look for doctors. Good luck. I mean, it's possible, but even if you find one, and it could be an integrated practitioner, they usually don't have experience in treating parasites. And if you need help, because you need to treat effectively. So our students, they usually test well for 3 to 5 parasite drugs at one time. and they do cycles of treatment. So they're treating for 14 days. The bigger worms and protists, and then fungus for about 10 days, and then they're taking a break. But on the break week, they're still using herbs and oxygen therapies. And that's one cycle. And they might do 4 to 6 cycles if they're not that sick. They might do a year to a year and a half cycles if they're if they've been really sick and disabled for a long period of time. So, and we need to definitely, take care of getting the bowels moving, taking binders to decrease the burden of toxins, cleaning up the environment. So we're using a holistic approach, but taking one dose of parasite drugs or just hit and miss, a low suboptimal dose is not going to help you to recover. You have to have a strategic plan, and we use a layering of therapies. So we found that the parasite drugs on their own are not enough, herbs on their own are not enough, and oxygen therapies alone are not enough. The combination of all three, when we've had a successful prep phase, is the magic key to all of this. Is what really helps people to have life-changing experiences. And I just wanted to share a few updates from our Wellness Champion students yet. So John was saying that he was anemic before he started the program, and that's really common, especially with worms, but with other parasites too. So every week we do a live Q&A call. We had it yesterday with the wellness champions that are in the Live Disease-Free program. And I just wanted to share just a few updates from students because it's quite dramatic for them. So, and I'll just leave it as student number 1 too, because we want to protect their identity because they're in the process right now. So student number 1 shared, so this student is just getting ready to treat. I have a much more positive outlook on completing things as I am starting to get my energy back. Before I started the Live Disease-Free diet, I only would have energy from, let's say, 9 a.m. till 2 to 3 p.m. every day. And after that, I was toast, mentally and physically. That has been going away now, and I consistently sleep well, and I'm up early. The amount of work that's on my plate would be impossible for me to do if I wasn't starting to have energy back again. I've also become much better at pre-cooking lots of my favorite foods, and that is really helping my energy and my schedule immensely. So we always talk about how important it is to prepare ahead, to have lots of food so that when you're hungry, you have something to grab and eat. And I now feel up to the enormous challenge. Because I have the improved energy, and I'm also feeling closer to being ready to treat. So this is one of the first things. Remember, we talked about lethargy and we talked about fatigue. And so just by following the diet and supporting the body, he is actually sleeping better and he's having more energy. So he's starting to get that energy back again, which is really important. And he hasn't even started treating yet. That's why the Live Disease-Free diet is so powerful. Student number 2. So this student is treating, has done a few treatment cycles, and he has some very profound statements. He said, I am treating and I passed 8 worms of various sizes this last treatment cycle or last week. The largest one that I could recover was about 6 inches long. And there were a couple that were thicker, so he thought they were probably intestinal flukes. And another that was longer, but it fell apart. So this happened with a bowel movement on Sunday. After passing these worms, I felt relief and depression lifted. So this is how quickly we can start to notice symptom improvements. It's that fast. And when this student passed 8 worms, they passed many other worms before. So it's not like, wow, this person passed 8 worms. This is just 8 from many others that this student passed. It's really shocking how many worms we can have inside of us when we're really sick. Like, you'd think that our body would not function, but it's really quite shocking. So after passing these worms, I felt relief and the depression lifted. During the week, I passed a fluke while doing the oxygen enema. And I feel like the parasitic medications are really helpful for me also. And I felt more social this week after the depression lifted. So again, parasites cause depression. And he has been able to start running again. And he's running 20 minutes every 5 times a week. And he found that the parasite drugs are also helping. He still had some cramping in the legs, and that's caused by parasites too. So passing those parasites and using the parasite drugs is actually continuing to reduce the spasticity, we call it, or cramping. And he said, the circulation in my legs has improved from passing these worms. I can feel it while I ran. I can feel this while I ran after the passage of those 8 worms. And I felt that it took a load off of my body, my immune system, my legs. Going for a run, I can feel it. So he said, I can also feel it during the day that my legs feel better circulation. I also feel it's because my circulation has improved that I have more stamina while I'm running. And I don't think it's because of repetitive running as much as less of a parasite load. And that's a really big point there, because like let's say if you had 50 worms in you, which is totally possible, and when, let's say, you pass the first 2 or 3, you might not notice a lot of symptom improvement, but this student has passed a lot of them. And so when he's kind of getting like to the tipping point of the population of the worms decreasing enough, you can notice it that quickly. Like if you don't have that many worms left inside of you and you pass those 8, then all of a sudden it can be like, like one day you're just more tired and you can't run as well. Like you can run, but then all of a sudden you pass those worms and then you can just run like a 20-year-old. You're just like, oh my gosh, like what is going on? And many of our students have explained that. And it can be that dramatic and that quick as far as anxiety, depression, stamina, strength, all of that. It's just, you feel so normal when you pass these large worms. It's just, it's crazy. And you can't explain it until you experience it. And I've personally experienced it myself. Student number 3, I'm feeling a little better this week. So this is a student that's just getting ready to treat, following the diet, supporting the body. My walking and the clarity in my head are better at times. So it's going to be at the very beginning, it's going to be a little bit up and down, but you just keep perfecting your plan and just getting ready to treat. Student number 4, before I started the Live Disease-Free program, I had night sweats. I was really sensitive to the heat. I had some numbness in my feet and hands and parts of my lips. I also had vision problems. My heart rate was faster than normal. And I also had shakiness or tremors in my body. After starting the Live Disease-Free diet, the numbness and my vision problems went away, and most of the heat sensitivity went away also. So this is just from diet. She's just getting ready to treat. She hasn't started treating yet, which is crazy. So the tremors, like once you find the right treatments, we have had lots of students that the tremors are no longer an issue. Actually, she did do a couple of treatment cycles, so she is still treating. I just remembered that. I've got a lot of students. And student number 5, the neuropathy has ceased, but I'm still experiencing some muscle twitching and spasticity in my calves. The Live Disease-Free diet is going really well. I have lots of energy, and I'm having daily bowel movements, and I'm consistently getting 8 hours of sleep each night. So this person is pretty much ready to treat. Student number 6, I reached out to you in February this year, that's 2024, because I thought I was going to die. I was collapsing without notice. I would awaken from a restful sleep with heart palpitations, sweating, and dizziness. I had a complete cardiac workup and my heart was healthy, so why was I having these cardiac events? After reading your book and another book, I realized that I was suffering from silent infections such as parasites and candida overgrowth, and these episodes were not going to go away on their own. I was numb from the neck down. I couldn't feel my lungs expanding with each breath, so I felt as though I was suffocating. My hands felt like they were on fire. I had sensitivity to water. It felt as though the water was boiling hot when it was not. So showering was very painful. Fast forward to my third treatment cycle. So she's using parasite drugs, oxygen therapies, and herbs. I now have almost zero symptoms, and I have a slight tingling in my hands, zero electric shock down my spine. I'm working out again, and I'm applying for nursing jobs. Amazing. So that's just 3 treatment cycles, and not everybody can go that quickly. Like, I wish I could figure that out, but all I know is for her, that's amazing. I mean, as far as everybody's different, right? We all have different loads of parasites. We have different levels of support. We have different levels of how well we implement, how quickly we implement, but amazing. Student number 7, sending you a quick update. I'm continuing to do well. It's been a good month. I still have heart palpitations, but they are often less and less severe. I've not had them in the middle of the night for a few weeks now. The tinnitus seems to be decreasing also. And student number 8, I've been following the Live Disease-Free diet strictly and doing the prep work. And I've had significant improvement in my mobility, my balance, and the disease symptoms. I think I'm ready to start treating, which is awesome. And what we say is that it's really important that your carbs are low enough that you're noticing these types of symptom improvements, you're having daily bowel movements, and you're sleeping at least 8 hours per night, because that way you will be able to tolerate the treatments better, and you will be able to treat more aggressively to actually make a difference, to actually recover from these parasites. So these are the amazing successes that we get every week from our students. It was like Christmas to hear this, right? And the one student that's jogging, he's also, he's starting a business, and he's doing well in school. And it's just so neat to see people getting their health and their life back. It's so encouraging. And so this is what I want for every single one of you. And I hope and pray that this becomes part of our healthcare system. I don't think we'll need very many different types of medical experts, because your GP could treat parasites early on, and then we won't end up with cancer or autoimmune disease or heart disease. And then, there could be some reason for certain specialists, but it's going to be very minimal. It would be a much more cost-effective healthcare system. Wouldn't that be nice? That would be amazing. So what I would encourage you to do is, number 1, is to look at this list of symptoms. I'm going to do the blog post by the end of the week. The one from last week, I bit off more than I can chew, so it's going to take a little bit of time to put all of that information together. This one is pretty straightforward. So this will be on our website, livediseasefree.com, by the end of the week. Go through the symptoms and really be honest with yourself, and then look for a practitioner. Learn about this, go through our blog post, or just watch my masterclass training. You'll find a link for it, and that really explains the types of infections, parasites that we're dealing with, how we treat them. It goes more into detail with the steps of treating, amazing case studies. And then if you need support, if you don't have a practitioner, make sure to reach out, because I would love to support you in the proven plan. Once you have the skill, you'll have it for the rest of your life. You'll be able to manage the microbes in your body, just like you do with your pets, right? It's very important, because this is what gets our health and our life back and allows us to live an amazing, beautiful, long and healthy life, and have many, many wonderful memories. So if you enjoy what I share, if you find it helpful, please help us to get the word out by liking and sharing this video. And you can also subscribe, and make sure to, if you subscribe, you'll know when the next training is coming out. Other than that, I hope that you found this helpful for you, and I hope you have a wonderful week. Take care, and bye-bye for now.